Hi everyone, Amy here, and I'm going to make a Mermaid Sparkle Shaker card today. And this is part of the Spread the Sparkle collaboration, so I'll tell you more about that in a moment. But to start, I'm going to show you a couple stencils. Now these are new in the June release at A Colorful Life Designs. This is the Mermaid Circle, and the other one that I'm going to use on this card is the 6x9 Stormy Waves. Now these are just two of many new stencils in the shop, so be sure to check them out. I'll link everything that I used in the video description box below. But this is special because this is a collaboration with a company called Doodles Paper Playground. And if you aren't familiar, it's another small business owned by a woman, and her name is Amber, and she makes these gorgeous sparkle blends. I'm going to be using this Ocean Beauty sparkle blend that she sent me, and it pairs perfectly with these two ocean themed stencils. So I'm just going to pour them out in the dish here and show you what you can expect in this blend. Now there's all different mermaid looking colors, and there's these cute little, I don't know if they're little clay pieces, but this little tiny narwhal, and then there's a bigger narwhal. I think there's little blue shells in there, so all sorts of super fun little shaker bits. But you could absolutely put these on the front of the card for embellishment or blingage, so lots of possibilities here. Now here's a couple photos of the card finished here. I'm going to show you how I made it. It's a nice close-up. You can see the blend inside the shaker well here. But I'm just going to go through the process. To start, I cut down this A2 size panel with this stitched edge rectangle die, and this is what I'm going to do my ink blending and stenciling on. So I did put some pixie spray on the back of this inner portion, excuse me, the inner portion of the mermaid stencil, and I'm going to put her on the horizontal orientation panel, and I'm just pressing it down with my brayer just to make sure it's really stuck down. And then I'm going to ink blend around her. Now to start, I'm just using residual ink left over on my brush because I want it to be just kind of subtle. I want her to stand out in all white against the background, but I don't want it to be super rich and dark like I would get if I come directly from the ink pad, because I'm going to save that for the next layer. So here I'm going to leave that masking portion in place on the panel, and then I'm going to take this 6x9 stencil and layer that over top. And then you'll see I come in with a little bit of a heavier hand. And I did spray pixie spray on the back of this as well, but my bottle's getting a little low, so I didn't get very good even coverage on this. So just make sure you get even coverage and give it a minute to kind of dry up a little bit, and then stick it down to your card base or your panel. Now I didn't end up using all these colors. I thought I would use the ones from the Paradise Found collection, but I thought they'd end up being a little too dark. So I ended up just using, I think Aquatini and something borrowed maybe. So they're a little bit lighter in color and aren't as in your face, which I felt worked better with this design. So now I'm just using, you know, the ink pad to lay down the colors in a couple different spots throughout the panel, kind of heavier handed in spots and lighter handed in others. You don't have to be too perfect or concise with this. Just like water, it's going to have all different hues, and here I'm over here making a mess. I think I put my blending brush right down on top of another one of the ink pads. Not sure where my brain was, but does that ever happen to you guys? I feel like I'm so often struggle bus. But anyway, I decided not to go with those dark colors here and just use those two. And then I'm going to pull back the magnets and do the nice big reveal. Now this mermaid was really stuck down. I think I could have let it stick or let it dry a little bit longer in my spray box. It may have been a little bit wet. And like I said, my can is getting a little low, so it wasn't spraying the greatest, and it almost got a little bit chunky. So I did have some residue left on here, but I did come back at it with an adhesive eraser, and that'll take it right off. Just make sure that your ink is totally dry before you do that. So now I have this panel ready to go. Now here's where I did this shaker a little bit differently. This is adhesive backed foam, and I cut down two pieces, basically A2 size, but a little bit smaller. And you will see I do end up cutting it down a little bit smaller still, because it was too close to the edge and I didn't want it to be too fiddly trying to line it up. So here, I know that my die is going to go, I have these nested circle dies from Hero Arts, and I'm admiring all my ink all over my fingers here. But I decided to take one of the circles and kind of nestle it in between, kind of following along the curve of the mermaid. I felt like it went really well with the composition. Now, guys, I'm kind of winging it as I go, and I'm figuring that I'm going to put the sentiment in the top left, but do yourself a favor and do a little bit of planning in advance, because it makes stamping and planning with your sentiment a lot easier when you're just working on a flat panel rather than a big old, you know, thick shaker card. So stop at this point if you're going to do this design and think about what you want to do for your sentiment. But here I know that I'm going to double up those layers of foam, but I can't cut through both of them in one go. So I'm just tracing this circle that I cut out, and then I'm taking the next size up of die, and then I'm going to cut it out so that the opening in the foam is a little bit wider than the opening of the actual card panel. So you can see here, I'm just using my little tick marks to figure out where to line this up, knowing that I'm going to eventually attach these two foam pieces to themselves and then attach it to the card base and underneath the ink blended panel, if that makes sense. So hopefully it'll make sense as we go. Now here you can see I'm just kind of pushing that first cutout through down to the second panel just so I can get it lined up in the exact same place. And I'm just kind of pulling out the cutout and then running this through my die cutting machine. So now both of these holes should line up not only with each other with the foam, but then also with that top panel. And at this point, I'm just trying to make sure that I get them lined up as well as I can, so that there's no overhang. So I probably could have done this better if I was right over it, but I didn't want to put my head into the camera. And I do end up cutting it down a little bit just because it was so close to the edge of the panel, and I didn't want to risk it being wonky. So I just trimmed it down, and then it was still easy enough to line up with that opening on the card panel in the front. So it wasn't a big deal. Now you see it's double thick now, and I do still have the adhesive on the back of that one sheet, so I can easily remove this backer and attach it right down to the card base. And that is A2 size 110-pound cardstock Neenah Classic Crest Solar White. And I'm just kind of lining it up in the center, knowing that the opening from the front panel is going to be a little bit smaller. So if it's not exactly perfect, it's not going to be a huge deal. And now here I'm trying to line this back up with the original panel, because I will attach that as well when I put all the pieces parts back together. So here, to make the shaker window, I have some of this embossable window plastic, and I will link that in the video description box below. And I have some score tape, and I'm just going to put this around in a square around the circle. It doesn't matter that it's not circle shaped, because it really just needs to hold down the plastic for the window. And I'm going to remove the backer and then lay down that little square of plastic that I just cut out from the embossing window panels. So here I'm just kind of lining everything up, again, trying to figure out exactly where that goes. I couldn't figure out how to line it back up exactly from the original panel. It was a little strange. So I did my best. Either way, it's the same colors. It doesn't really matter if it's not perfect. And then there's going to be the little shaker bits. Now, a word of caution, I did take my embossing tool to try and make any residual stick in that foam less sticky. You can see here that's what I'm doing. But I did find that with the two pieces of foam being stuck together, that some of these little shaker bits do want to kind of get stuck in there. So I can't say that this is the best method. There may be a better way to do it, or maybe even just one piece of foam, honestly, might have actually done the trick. But there was something to those two little pieces of foam being stuck together. Some of these pieces do kind of want to get stuck along that outer edge of the circle. So just bear that in mind if you do this technique. I mean, it wasn't a deal breaker, and there's still plenty of them that move around, but that is something to consider. You want to make sure there's not something that's going to kind of, you know, force your little shaker bits to be stuck in areas where you don't want them. So now I'm using that score tape again and just going around the outer perimeter on the back of the ink blended panel, and also close to the window. And I'm just going to remove those backer pieces and then just line that up right on the front of the card. And then that nice even foam underneath will give it dimension evenly all across the card. It should ship okay, just because it's pretty even dimension, but like I said, it does sit up pretty high. So you would definitely need to pay extra postage for this. So this would definitely be a good one to hand deliver if that is an option. So I'm just doing my best to line it up and pulling the backer off the rest of the way when I know it's good. And then I'm just going to kind of push this down. Now I need to figure out the sentiment. Like I said, if I had done any element of planning, then I could have actually done it before I attached all the pieces. But here you'll see I'm taking that adhesive eraser and just kind of getting some of the residual pixie spray off. Like I said, it gets a little chunky towards the end of the can, and it did leave a little bit extra on there. Nothing that damaged the card or tore it or anything like that, but I didn't want it on there. So it comes off easy enough with this sort of adhesive eraser. If you don't have one, then I definitely recommend you get one for your stash. And I have this adorable little Hero Art stamp set. It's got all sorts of like mythical or magical creatures, so I thought that sentiment would be perfect. And since I couldn't really stamp it, since it was already all put together and very thick, I decided to just stamp it with that same Something Borrowed for the sentiment on the outside and the inside. And then I'm just going to attach those right onto the card. So if you don't plan ahead like me and you need to find a place for sentiment, and you're nervous about stamping it because it has all the bulk, then consider just stamping it and cutting it out. You can see I did fussy cut out that front one, and then this was just a little scrap from a previous die cut that I had on my desk. So you make it work, right? You know, you wing it, then you gotta wing it with the sentiment too, especially when that's a bit of an afterthought. So I have a little bit of foam tape here. This is foam tape from scrapbook.com, and I'm just gonna put that on the back of this sentiment that I fussy cut out and put that on the front of the card. So have a legendary birthday, you know, because mermaids are the thing of legends. And now I have this crystal clear bubbles, which is also from the shop, and these are super cool, all different sizes, and they legit look like water droplets. Like so cool. I could see me using these all the time, and I love the sizes. I do have a set of these from somewhere else, but I gotta say I like these better because they're more reasonably sized. They're not super huge. They don't sit off the paper super high. So I think I definitely prefer these. So these will also be linked below my video and available in the shop. So be sure to check these out. As you can see, they look amazing on the front of a card for embellishment, but you could absolutely use them on the inside for a shaker as well, if that's your jam. But ultimately, I just thought it worked so well with the whole water theme and then all those little ocean beauty cuties on the inside. So that's going to tie everything together. So I hope you enjoyed this slightly different way of doing a shaker and using some of your adhesive back foam to kind of cut some steps out of the process, but I'm pleased with how it turned out. I like having the stenciling on the inside of the card too. Kind of brings the design from the front to the inside of the card and finishes it up. So hopefully this will make someone happy on their birthday. And be sure to check out the shops, both at A Colorful Life Designs and at Doodles Paper Playground. Two awesome woman-owned small businesses. So we got to support the little guys, right? So thanks so much for watching. I appreciate it. I'll catch you next time. Bye.